Hey guys, welcome back to another Thursday night edition of our Facebook Lives for Health Freedom Iowa. I'm Joni Abbott. Erica Dawson is here with me, as well as the wonderful, the great, my radio brother from forever, Robert Scott Bell. You can find him at robertscottbell.com. He's got one of the nation's leading natural health talk shows, and he's an amazing mentor as well. Robert Scott Bell, welcome to Health Freedom Iowa.
Joni, thank you. I only wish I was with you to give you a great big hug and
I know.
everybody with Health Freedom Iowa, because we don't fear hugs here.
That's right. We don't fear hugs. I miss being on the show, Robert.
Well, listen, you just say when and you're in.
Okay. Well, I really have had a lot of fun with you over the years, hosting and co-hosting and being kind of crazy. And I'll see you again in October for the Trinity Health Freedom Expo at Tinley Park Convention Center. That's October 24th and 25th. You'll be hosting some panels and speaking. I'll be on some panels and speaking, and we'll just, be really excited to be a part of that again.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Just barring any crazy Illinois, Chicago nonsense. But that's part of what we're here to talk about, I guess.
Absolutely. So we're just going to start talking about COVID and the mask mandates that are going through like crazy. We just found out Ohio and Indiana are going to mandate those tomorrow. Much love to our friends at Health Freedom Ohio, Michelle, Scott, and Nadra. It's the fight of our lives in a really weird way. It's no longer being understood as, about health, but it's more about compliance. And you've had Jonathan Emord, a constitutional lawyer, who has just been, phenomenal in the fights for freedoms throughout the years. What is his take on the constitutionality of mask mandates? Because I've seen some news stories that actually tried to debunk the fact that it's the people who claim that it's against their constitutional rights. Mainstream media say, no, it's not. We can do it.
Well, it all goes back to the Jacobson decision in the early 20th century. And it's the same tired vaccine argument.
Yeah.
My vaccine won't work unless you're vaccinated. My mask won't work unless you're wearing a mask. And of course, the presumption of guilt before any evidence is presented regarding illness or the presence of viral proteins or an RNA sequence as detected apparently through massive amplification to the tune of hundreds of billions and billions of times to claim that you have something that they don't have a test for. And it sounds eerily like what we've been over for years on the HIV tests that are not HIV tests, right?
Right. Well, the PCR test in particular, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we're dealing with a lot of scientific non-science, right? Or scientism, or as our dearly departed friend Liam Sheff would talk about, sci-fiantism. It really is science fiction what's happening here. And so, I look at the masking issue, and we look at it from a constitutional perspective as well. If they can prove that you're an imminent harm to others in terms of spreading disease or infection or something, yeah, there's legitimacy in that, considering that a reckless endangerment scenario and clamping down on some level of freedom. But there isn't any evidence here. That's the problem. We're all running, not you and me and others that follow us, but like the proverbial chickens with no heads. I mean, there's no intelligent discussion, critical thinking skills that they're saying, well, if you don't wear a mask, you're somehow going to kill somebody. That's insane. That's never been the case. And let's look at the masks themselves. Last Sunday with my good buddy John Rappaport, we dismantled that last vestige of illusion as the CDC has scientific paper admitting that even the N95 mask, much less any face covering, is not designed to stop particles that are as small as a virus, influenza or otherwise. So there's no evidence of prevention of so-called transmission, if you even believe that transmission is really happening here. So the basis for claiming that you have to wear a mask, what is it? It's not even called a mask anymore. It's a face covering. You
Right.
could take an old sock and wrap it around your face as if that's going to protect you. And that's okay. You can come in. You have an old sock on your face. This is stupid, absolutely stupid, without merit, without any critical thinking skills intact in this regard. So you're right. It's fear porn leading to control of the population and compliance. And the claim is you're not a good little citizen. You don't care about grandma because you want to kill grandma if you don't wear a mask.
Right.
Based on what?
It's like ad hominem attacks, really, like they're going to attack your character. They're going to say that you're selfish. They're going to say that you don't care about people. That is like the cheapest in argumentation and debate, that's like the cheapest argument tactic. And when people start to go to ad hominem attacks, then they've lost. They've already lost. They know that they've lost. They know that they're losing, but somehow they're able to gain emotional compliance for
Right.
people who, genuinely care about the health of others and who genuinely care about their health. They're just misguided with what this is and what this isn't. There's such a disconnect from our human body. There's such a disconnect from understanding the virome, the viruses. I know that Zach Bush has been putting some really great stuff out there about the virome and the virology process.
Yeah. I mean, if you're really afraid of viruses, which I'm not, and no one should be, they're more or less what we're learning about exosomes internally generated due to perhaps toxicity or maybe deficiency. And that's another thing we dissolved on, let's see, yesterday show or 2 days ago, whenever this airs, I don't know. But this week, had my buddy Chris Barr on, and we were reporting on a study out of China that was being republished, and letters were coming through the University of Hawaii. And it showed that in areas where there were high or adequate selenium levels in the people, there was no issue with anybody dying from the so-called COVID thing. And the places where the lowest selenium levels existed, that's where they had the biggest problems. And so what we're dealing with, as we've argued for many years, if you're concerned about viral activity, bottom line, selenium deficiency, always, always, always. And so the narrative should be supplement with the right form of selenium, and you've got nothing to be concerned about.
At
For a
minimum,
lot
you
of
can eat
reasons.
3 Brazil nuts a day. Minimum.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't carry as much as it used to, but that'd be better than nothing, right? And so if we look at the waves of people that died in this so-called pandemic, they were all the most selenium deficient people on the planet. They were on multiple medications, had multiple comorbidities, immune suppression, immune deficiency, or iatrogenic causes of death, which means the interventions themselves caused the death by the doctors.
So why do you think hold on, let me rephrase that because we all kind of know why. Selenium, we don't hear about it as much as we should, and it is such a powerhouse. It is such a dynamic building, like essential building block. Let's talk a little bit more about what it does in the body, and just let me rack your brain on that for a little bit for our listeners.
Well, you mentioned Jonathan Emord, and of
Yeah.
course he's an FDA dragon slayer. He's the attorney, constitutional attorney, and he's fought the FDA back and he won like 8 times against them on the allowance or allowable claims for certain dietary mineral supplements, like selenium in particular. Well, because there's more science on selenium than just about anything in its prevention and capacity for against cancer and reversing cancer, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just the starting point. But selenium is the key for the production of glutathione peroxidase, which is known as a master antioxidant, anti-inflammatory agent. And if you don't have the right form, you might have levels of selenium in your blood that you can measure and say, oh, that's good. But if it's not the right form, it's not going to convert glutathione to glutathione peroxidase. So it is critical for liver detoxification, all cellular detoxification activities. And without selenium, we're vulnerable to anything and everything, including the cellular dysregulation from within, causing the spewing out of what we call exosomes, or they call viruses, which are not the cause of anything, but they are an adaptation. And some would argue a communication signal with genetic information as well about toxicity and deficiency.
That's fabulous. The best form of selenium.
Well, you mentioned Brazil nuts, and in the past, Brazil nuts were very rich in selenium, but just like all the soils of the planet and plants growing on the soils, they've been depleted tremendously. So it's a fraction of what it once was. So you really have to look to supplement. And we utilize only 100% whole food supplements because synthetic isolates do not have the same impact. Amino acid chelates do not have the same impact. Selenomethionine, which is a popular form of selenium, is not
Same.
complete, comprehensive enough. So the innate response selenium is what I use. I'm not brand loyal per se, but that's the form that I've used, and clinically I get the best results without question. So my whole family uses that every day.
What would be some good signs to look at for selenium deficiency? Immune dysregulation for sure.
Sure. Well, any immune challenge, anybody that says, oh my gosh, I feel a little weak and under the weather and challenged, and they want to go to run to vitamin C, I'm like, don't even worry about it. Just take micrograms of selenium. It does more than grams of C any day. And so it's just, that's how much people don't know about selenium. They're told about this ascorbic acid, which is not even vitamin C in reality. It's just
No.
kind of another artificial isolate, often genetically modified to be made. Now there are whole food forms of C, but still they pale in comparison to what the whole food form of selenium can do. I think of it as really, if I'm under the weather, now we haven't been traveling as much like we used to.
Right.
Those are the times where I could get worn down. And those are the times I would go, all right, I'm normally taking 200 to 400 micrograms, sometimes 450 micrograms of selenium a day, the whole food form. I'm going to double it, maybe go up to 900 micrograms in a day. No problem at all. And that will usually counteract things where people are taking thousands of milligrams of C and maybe getting results with that. And so I'm not opposed to people want to do C, but I haven't needed to since I realized how valuable selenium is for almost every metabolic function in the body.
Oh, perfect. That's so good to know. I know there's so many that are deficient in just the basics of nutrition. There was something I came up with and thought about the other day, and I know you are my guy to go to for this when it concerns the germ theory. Louis Pasteur, of course, you know,
Yeah.
you were one of my earliest mentors in this work and in this study. But, you know, we've been germ theory washed. And that's the best way, you know, we've been talking about, you know, history being whitewashed and how important it is to incorporate correct history of our nation, of the world. And when it comes to our health, we've been germ theory washed. And so I thought about this and I'm like, you know, the history of our medical system has been systematically hijacked by small groups of elite people controlling the narrative of our health, right? We have this all of these stories behind how we get sick, right? Oh, you can't go around him, you might get sick. And that's just really as early as we can remember that it's starting, because it's just based on a theory that just the more time goes by, it just proves that that theory doesn't hold up anymore.
The germ theory is a crime against creation itself, a crime against nature. Those of you who are green, so to speak, and you believe that germs cause disease, you're actually at war with nature herself. And this is a problem. I would say that Louis Pasteur, was friends with the emperor. He stole things from Antoine Béchamp and bastardized them into things that they didn't really mean. And he is responsible, and those who believe in him and his teachings, if you will, and that theory you mentioned so well, it's only a theory, it's not actually validated, the germ theory. I'd say Pasteur is more dangerous in terms of a historical figure than Hitler, Pol Pot, Mussolini, and you name other dictators that have slaughtered millions of people combined. Because of our belief in, if we have that germs cause disease, we have gone to war against nature, which is a war against ourselves and our animal friends, because we destroy the very things that give us life, the environment, the terrain, the milieu, including that which lives in it that is healthy when it is balanced and regularly detoxified, and of course minerally rich, etc. And of course the destruction of the microbiome via vaccination, via antibiotics, via glyphosate poisoning, pesticides, and other things, is again something that a lot of people that claim to be green and all for the environment and nature, they run out and get an antibiotic anytime they're told they have an infection by a doctor, and that is anti-life. It is destructive of your very immune system and health, and then we have to rebuild and repair on top of whatever preceded that issue with what the doctors have intervened with which I call forms of toxic chemotherapy, antibiotics.
Yeah. It's that's such a strong statement that you just made. It's just perfect. I just want to pause for a second and just kind of let that sink in, because it's the very basis of and the foundation of our health. And if we're talking about accepting responsibility and taking responsibility for your health, a lot of people don't know what that looks like. They say, but you know, they give their power away over and over and over again in the system, in the modern medical allopathic system that we're in. And, you know, what are some of the greatest, you know, base thoughts that you might have on helping someone become empowered and really connected to their sovereignty? Because it's got to be the decision that you make at home first. You have to decide, I'm responsible for me. I take care of my health. Nobody else is in charge of that. That's where.
Well, yeah. First of all, fire your medical doctor. Stay far, 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 far away from allopathic physicians unless they've outgrown their training and start, at the very least, integrating some semblance of natural options. But very often it's kind of mitigating the toxic effects of other things that they do. So,
Right.
I'm biased. Okay. I'm a homeopath, right? It seems to be a never ending battle between homeopathic medicine and allopathic medicine. I don't think it's a battle. There's a place for everything.
Yep.
But outside of emergency trauma interventions, doctors are not adequately trained to help you get well, much less stay well. They are trained in disease creation and disease management. So we've got to stop looking to these folks and the government officials that praise them, or whether they're medical or scientific in government that praise that concept of the battle against nature. And then, of course, medical reporters who are not reporters, they're not investigators. They just are paid well to say things and not say things. And so they're not investigating. So they're reporting on nonsense stuff like this COVID crisis is caused by a novel new virus. If so, how is it that they're acknowledging that T cells have already gotten identification and attaching to receptor sites on this so-called novel new virus? I mean, they've tested blood from years ago that was taken and stored and integrated it with what they claim is new. And they're like, well, how come the T cells know exactly what it is? I mean, the narrative is so wrong. That's why I come back on this COVID crisis. The narrative is selenium deficiency. Break the cycle for fractions of the penny on the drug dollar, and all the shutdowns and all the stupid masks and all the billions of dollars being wasted, given away to Pfizer and Sanofi and, name the drug company.
Right.
To develop a vaccine for which there is no need and will only create more disease, decay, mayhem, all the things that they claim if you don't wear a mask are going to happen. They're going to happen times 1,000 if you get that whatever experimental vaccine that they end up approving.
Yeah.
So
It's
we,
dangerous. It's reckless. And it's like they are not held accountable. Our government protects them.
That's right. Yeah, 1986, The Act. Did you see Dr. Wakefield's new movie?
You know what? I've not seen it yet. I have plans to watch it this weekend because I don't want to miss it. It's so good. I've watched the trailer. I've sent it to other people. I've shared it on
rent it and watch it with the kids. I did that last week. My wife and kids, we sat. It's a 2-hour movie, but it's a slow burn, and it builds and it builds. And by the time, man, even though my kids know this stuff, they're like, oh my God. I mean, it's like you will learn some things that even I didn't know about, some of the nuances of how it came to be, and how our government has empowered further, even since that passage, things that they didn't intend to put into it via the Supreme Court. So stunning levels of pharmaceutical conflicts of interest at the highest levels of our government.
Yeah, so many of us, we reference the 1986 law that grants immunity to any vaccine manufacturer. Should any illness or death occur, it grants them, immunity. And that's just kind of a blanket statement that we use, but I don't even know that many of us really actually know the depths of it. And I'm sure that Andy Wakefield does an amazing job of exploring that even further.
Yeah, and it's a brilliant narrative way, because it's part documentary and it's part scripted acting too. In a husband wife about to have their first child, and the vaccine issue comes up, and it's how they uncover and unravel whether they should or shouldn't, and the things they learn through it. So it's nice because it kind of catches, like, anybody that doesn't know this is they can see themselves in those two actors that are portraying the awakening through the documentary discoveries.
You know what? I'm doing a teaching tomorrow night on for new family has asked me to give them some educational resources. I'm just going to call them and tell them we're going to have a movie night, and we'll just watch that.
2 movies. The other one that I would recommend.
Yeah.
Secret Ingredients.
Yep.
Jeffrey Smith, Amy Hart.
Yep.
And that one. Those are the 2. And you're golden. You've got healthy kids.
That's right. Well, I mean, so many times this information is so hard for new families to take in and digest. And when the work's already done, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to get it out there for people to see and understand. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for giving me that idea and talking about 1986, The Act. And of course,
and when you see it, let me know how the girls like it and what they think of it too.
I will. Oh my gosh, I will. They'll be really excited to probably share their information. They've watched a lot of documentaries since COVID and the quarantine, and we've had a lot of very interesting discussions on all of that. So yeah. So Robert, let's move into mask mandates just a little bit more. Okay. Since we have so many, what do you suggest people do? I mean, besides just not wear the mask, I get this question a lot. Well, if I don't, then I can't shop anywhere. If I don't wear the mask, then I'm not going to be able to see XYZ. And I'm just like, don't send your kids to the public school and just,
we need a
don't shop
revolution.
there.
Yeah, we need a homeschool revolution in this sense. And that would be to the benefit of these kids, much less ultimately it's harder on the parents that, especially if you're single parent or if you have both parents that need to work, as it has been, although they're pretty much clamping down on any economic activity with the way they're making it so hard to do these things. But the mask thing assumes that everybody is sick or everybody is a potential spreader, which there's no evidence to support that. Quite the opposite is true. And of course, as I talk about the CDC and their recent acknowledgement that the masks themselves, even if they're the high level N95s that they use in surgical theaters, are not preventative in terms of viral transmission, because they don't filter out things that small. The only argument they could say is, like, if you wear a face covering, which is how they're calling it now, if you sneeze or spit, that will be captured. But it doesn't address that which is aerosolized and airborne, that is so small that it's not contained. And even if you don't breathe in that certain area, there are the virome you talked about with that Zach Bush. There are viruses everywhere, or these exosomes, or these proteins, sequences. So there's no escape to it, and they don't cause disease anyway. But that's, we've lost temporarily that battle because of the 150 years of germ theory fear porn, right?
Right.
So there's pragmatism and practicality to the masking scenario. Like, I have gone into many stores, Costco's and others, that say you have to wear a mask, and I just say medical issue, and come right in. At IKEA, I'd never been to an IKEA. I went in one a few weeks ago, first time, and like, okay, yeah, here's a sticker just so our employees don't harass you. I'm like, okay. Now they seem to be making it even more difficult. I tried to get a haircut. Like, they said you have to wear a mask. I said, well, medical issue. If you can't wear a mask, sorry, we can't see you. So if you want to push it further, and I think there should be a point to do that, there's the American with Disabilities Act. Now, they don't have a right to ask you what your medical issue is. Technically, you can volunteer it if you want, but that you have it is enough. It's just that you're not in a wheelchair. Like, if you were in a wheelchair, would you refuse me service? No, there's reasonable accommodation under the law, and that's what we're asking for. And so most places will accommodate you, but not all. A lot of them are uninformed, and we might have to do a better job of reaching to the heads of these corporations, whether it be local or national, and instruct them that they are subject to suit for violating our rights to move out. Now, someone will say, well, how do I know if I have a medical issue? Like, anybody that knows anything about reduction in the flow of oxygen, or the buildup of CO2 in the body, it becomes rapidly a medical issue, temporarily or even more permanently, more severe it gets. And we have enough evidence to show the dropping of oxygenation of the blood. We have enough evidence to show once you put on the mask, within seconds, the CO2 levels rise beyond OSHA standards of safe work environments, much less shopping environments. And the reality is the mask is theater because, as we said, there's no science to support the protection against things as small as viral particles. They don't stop them. So it's nonsense. It's fear porn leading to control of the population. People think, I'll be a good little citizen and wear one. And it's like, well, if you acquiesce to a mask mandate, what's next?
Right.
Vaccine coming? It's mandatory. Sorry, you didn't stand up for your rights when it was a mask. What makes you think they're going to let you stand up for your rights when it's a vaccine?
What do you think the best possible way for us as citizens to stand up, besides civil disobedience, just not doing it? What is the next best step, you think? I mean, because we always encourage our followers here at Health Freedom Iowa to contact their legislators, have conversations with them about it, produce the documents that show harm, let them know that you're not okay with it. Plus, there are elections, and you don't have to elect and vote for the person who wants to mandate masks, right? So
sure. I think, recently Ty and Charlene and a few others set up this USA, or the Medical Freedom PAC, to kind of vet people running on all levels to find out where they are on this issue of medical freedom, which includes this masking issue, vaccine issue, et cetera. So we can do a better job perhaps vetting those that we're thinking about putting in or reelecting. But I agree, making some sort of relationship with your local councilman or woman and mayors, and on up through the state legislature or state senate, up to the governor's office, and flood them. Like Georgia's governor, interesting, Kemp said, no mask mandates on my watch. I'm like, okay, I respect that immensely. Now, private companies still have the freedom to say, these are our rules. You have to wear a mask for entry. But again, under the law, they have to have make reasonable accommodations for those who have medical issues. So the questioning once again is, well, what if I don't have a medical issue? Well, I think technically it is. Breathing is a medical issue. And the moment you reduce the free flow of oxygen and air, that becomes a real issue for everybody, not just those with a history of respiratory ailments.
Yeah, it becomes a medical issue for every breathing human being. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's more convenience. I would say to go a step further is the more we can grow our own food, the less we have to go into those stores for anything. Now, I know that's unrealistic for some right now, but it's something I've heard more and more people than ever. And, Liam, our buddy,
I
is
know.
always talking about growing food. He helped me
Always.
build my first raised bed back in Florida, and we've got more here now, and it's just going great. And we're having people every day send their garden pictures. I call them sexy garden pictures. Send them to us. And so we're highlighting all of the listener pictures of those that are growing from the most humble of little places to these plots where they convert their entire property to gardens, which is amazing, to
Wow.
show people that it can be done. And you got to start somewhere, start right now. So we reduce our reliance on these retailers that are controlled often by government because they've asked for special permission to exist. That's what they call about articles of incorporation. This is where the state says, I grant you life, right? A company. And so they get to make the rules and they clamp down on it. They can't control you or me unless we acquiesce and we behave as if we are corporations or creations of the state, which unfortunately a lot of Americans do. They number themselves like cattle, and then they're trapped. They don't realize that their rights come from God, not government, and that there aren't even such things as constitutional rights. The best you can hope for are constitutionally protected rights, because rights don't come from the Constitution or Bill of Rights or government. But that our founders knew that, and we have been lost in a sea of socialism and glory of government indoctrination in school systems for decades and decades. And, some of us who survived it and had to unlearn it, deprogram from it, and relearn the things we know to do what we do, including what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite a journey to unlearn and relearn. And, that is how we do gain our sovereignty. That is how we understand our freedoms are not given, but they're this inalienable right. It's sovereign within you, and you don't have to ask other people permission. So stop asking people permission for your own freedom, because you've already got it. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I walked away from when I finally had the aha moments on my health and sovereignty. So yeah.
Well, slaves ask for permission. Free people have no reason to, unless they're utilizing the property of others. Then yes, it's polite and probably recommended, especially if the person who owns the property is armed, and defends their property, as we have a right to do.
Point taken. So Robert, I wanted to just have this discussion with you today and introduce Health Freedom Iowa followers, listeners, and viewers to you, to your show, to all that you are and the wealth of knowledge that you are. So if you are someone wanting to start on this health journey and learn more about your health, learn how you can take control of your health and healing all from home and help your family and get on this journey, you can listen to the Robert Scott Bell Show every single day except for Saturday, but he's on every day on the robertscottbell.com.
Yes, correct. And if anything drives me, Health Freedom does. And I don't mean to hyphenate freedom, but I recognize, as I've talked about this for years. We have all different backgrounds and histories and lineage, whether it be, skin color or religion or, what's your sex, how you order. But the desire for good health pretty much crosses all of those barriers. And I found and figured out early on that if I could speak to that we can maybe bring people together instead of focusing on what may artificially divide us. As we talk about humans on the planet, there's no delineation between even countries then, although I am all about the sovereignty of countries, and the United States in particular, because we've come together, whether we were born here or emigrated here, to embrace something that is unique on this planet. I'm not saying we're always living up to it, but the defense of liberty, the spiritual freedom or the religious freedom, the freedom to worship, is being attacked, assaulted because of the fear of the germ. And that fear of the germ is part of the dogma of another church, interestingly enough, and we call it the Church of Pharmaceutical Mysticism. So our government has, in violation of the First Amendment, adopted a state or national religion. And it's not Christianity, it's not Judaism, it's not Islam, it's not Buddhism, it is pharmaceutical drugs. It's modern medicine, the medical monopoly. We've got to recognize that we need to separate, they say church and state. No, it's medicine and state. That's more dangerous.
Correct. Correct. And there's, what do they call that? Just the ties between the two. The ties are, I can't think of the word, but it's not something that we want. It's not something we want, you know.
Well, they've captured our government. The conflicts of interest go very deep economically and otherwise.
Yeah.
And, many people are duped into being what we call true believers. They have a
Yeah.
faith in medicine. It's not a science anymore. It's a religion.
Yes, and it's the conflict of interest was the word I was looking for. So thanks for picking up on that. Yeah. So, okay, you can find Robert at robertscottbell.com. Look at his blogs, listen to his guests. And if you aren't doing anything October 24th and 25th, we'd love to see you at Tinley Park Convention Center for the Trinity Health Freedom Expo. You can go to trinityhealthfreedomexpo.com. Robert Scott Bell, thank you so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate it. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, Joni. Extra big hugs from afar.
Of course, of course. Thank you so much.